All right, welcome everybody to the weekly Hangout with Dalten Collective. So today, I wanted to talk about some bootstrapping stuff and a conversation that I recently have had about these sorts of things. We've talked about the idea of, well, how can we start earning revenue? Well, we've got a couple ideas in the back burner. One being the trust metric, which we could potentially sell to other Urbit communities, which could be a prototypical or proto reputation management thing. We also have a potential that we could sell some additional planets coming off of some additional stars that might come into the Dalton Collective. So we've got some things in the back burner, but I wanted to talk about some more traditional or less traditional ways of getting some funding, if we even think that that's necessary. So a friend of mine today said, well, why wouldn't you just like create some IOUs, some tokens maybe for future work? Like, so if Dalton Collective can prove, or it has shown that it can create some software, specifically, let's say in Hoon, which is a relatively rare set of abilities, we could say create 1,000 tokens and say that these are worth, 1 hour of development time or something to that nature, or 1 hour of billable time, something like that. Go out and sell these tokens now, and then for cash, basically for Bitcoin or Ethereum or something. Then we would have a little stockpile that we could use for bootstrapping with sort of future work in play. So I hadn't quite thought about that exactly, but that seems fairly reasonable, at least on the face of it, depending on how much we kind of commit ourselves to. Few things immediately that stand out to me would be like, well, if we did issue some tokens like this, we'd be sort of obligated to sort of take projects that we might not necessarily want to take, that might be boring or just not much fun to work on. Might not necessarily need to be software either. It could be something else. But just wanted to throw that out there as an idea. So perhaps, what do you think about that?
It does bind us to potentially customers that we might not want as customers. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Not just that the project is dull, but maybe that the project has a negative connotation to it that we wouldn't want to associate with, or whatever. Like building an ad bot for you know what I mean, like something
Right.
like that. Also, I wonder, do you think that people would buy that for Hoon?
For Hoon, yeah, because especially when it becomes a little bit easier to distribute applications, because right now everybody's just sort of gets their applications over the air, or I should say more like their features, right? Because not really, there's a few applications, but a lot of the new things just come with over-the-air updates. Yep. But if the software distribution for customized versions of either landscape or apps, or either as generators or something else, then that could potentially work. But there would have to be some sort of need for it. And my guess is, though, but I see people often thinking like, oh, wouldn't it be great if somebody would build this? And if there was somebody that would actually build it, if you just paid them in sort of work hours, I don't know, maybe people might be willing to do it. It'd be something kind of similar to what the grants program that the Urbit Foundation is doing, with Josh, but more bottom up as opposed to top down, would be sort of my guess.
So then my thoughts are to organize them. First, that it might tie us to projects that we don't want to be tied to. Second, that whether or not there's a market, but like you say, maybe there is, and I'm wrong about that. The third one is that it might remove from us the potential for continued value coming out of those projects that we develop. Because if we're working based off an IOU rather than ingratiating someone to the group and retaining portions of that value, we lose out on the opportunity to do that latter.
Mm-hmm. That's true. The other mechanism we could potentially think about is something like revenue sharing. So this would be non-equity. Like so whoever put money into Dalton wouldn't have a part of the total asset pool that we sort of own, but they might have some claim on cash flow or depending on how that's sort of defined. So if we have a high margin business or teams that are working on high margin businesses, then that kind of makes sense. But if we had a team, like here's another example, if we had a team working on creating Raspberry Pis that would then put stars onto them and selling the Raspberry Pis like pre-configured for people, then you have a cost of goods sold, right? And it's probably going to be some lower margins, but you'd want to remove that from any particular sort of revenue model. So you could even say gross profit or net profit or something like that, where if we had things that are a little low margin or something, we could still, account for that, but we could also get some funding. And in that case, since there would be capital cost to doing like Raspberry Pi stuff, that would be some way to finance that.
Like, not to diverge from the central topic, but we've talked about this, like providing physical Urbit chips and or Urbit devices, and then how that would work and how that would look. There's this product called like Inkscape or Ink something, Ink Pad, whatever it is. It's a Wi-Fi enabled. I don't remember what the size is. Like, let's say 6x4 or 6x3 or something. E-ink pad that can do incremental updating and like partial screen updating and all that stuff. And it's like a hacker tool. You know what I mean? Like it's intended to be hacked on and open source and all this stuff. When I saw that the other day, I was like, man, if you could, because we've talked about how do you interface with the stupid little Raspberry Pi if we send that out. You know what I mean? Do you build in a screen? Do you set it up so that it's automatically rendering landscape on a specific port? But then how do you know what IP address it is and all of those sorts of things? If you could have some connectivity between like a physical device that you could carry around the home and the device that you just plug into your router, and those two things are separate, like I think that would be really cool. And like an e-ink version of landscape being produced is really fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could imagine, though this might not be a good way to do it. So imagine you got the Raspberry Pi. It needs to get the internet, but that's just an Ethernet cable. You turn it on, and then, like, let's say the tablet connects over Bluetooth. I mean, it's still limited, but it connects, and you don't have to do anything. It's just like it's landscape, and now you can like work with it. Can't get too far, but at least you can. You could also configure it that way, so it would tell you, because it knows what its IP address is. If you want to use this on your computer, go here. That could be interesting. Plus, just I think the aesthetics of e-ink really jives well with Urbit in general.
It sure does, man. Like I really want an e-ink phone, like so that I can. I think it would be good for me too to just get rid of like some applications that are on the phone that are wasteful, games and crap like that. You know, maybe even YouTube. But yeah, I would love that.
I've got one. It's an e-ink phone. What is it called? I can't remember. It was a Kickstarter, basically, but it can only do like phone calls, contacts. I think that's it. So it's like, what am I going to do with this? Maybe give it to my kid when she's older or something like that. Mark said he also has an e-ink phone.
Wow.
It's pretty
with
neat.
Colors.
Ooh.
It kind of defeats the purpose, I feel like. It better only be red. Any color as long as it's white, black, or red.
Yeah. But speaking of that, like Kickstarter is kind of also a similar model. So if we came out with some idea about what we wanted to do with a product like a Raspberry Pi and an e-ink display, it could be just a Kickstarter as well. So you could just
and then you don't even have to ship.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can take 5 years to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Do you ever remember the Coolest Cooler? That thing?
No.
It was this cooler years and years ago, went up on Kickstarter. It was one of their earliest hits. And it was this cooler that had a battery, and the battery powered a blender and a Bluetooth speaker. It's like, yeah, right? So you could make iced drinks and listen to music in your cooler on the beach. I was like, yeah, that's it. And it had USB ports to plug in your phone or whatever. So
Naturally.
I bought one of those things, and then they just totally biffed it on production, and they never sent me one. Like never. I never got one. Never got my coolest cooler. Never got it.
How much you pay for it?
I don't even remember. I think it was close to like $200 for a
Yeah.
stupid cooler and whatever.
Yeah, it's rough.
All right. So that's so those are the business models or business ideas that I've had in the last day or so. uh, any thoughts on that? Have you given some of that some more thought?
Have you guys seen Minder Folden's traffic on small? He's got a Raspberry Pi, and he apparently has gotten some small form factor screen attached to it, and
No, I hadn't.
he's pretty happy with it. And he's also making progress on using his phone to get into it.
Oh, that's
right?
cool.
So you may want to look through small.
Yeah, well, just
DOSFib
in general, I think. DOSFib Industries, I guess. Is
I don't think I'm in that group. I gotta get invited.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. And this might also be a partnership with DOSFib, I think. Just because
you see.
He's super into that kind of thing.
Okay. He says, is DOSFib Minder Folden's company or star?
No, his I can't remember what his star is. The DOSFib is
Roswet.
Yeah, that's DOSFib is. I can't remember his pat P. Knobweb, maybe? Does that sound right? I don't know.
Is it Knobweb, not Bud? I didn't think so.
Okay, so he says he ordered a 7-inch touchscreen setup for his Pi 4, so I can have my own little monitor on my desk. Blah blah blah. I've noticed that I need the Pi plugged into a monitor on startup. Okay, that's just the detail. Then
I got that running too. I actually did one before we were doing like Hoon School officially. Like I had ruined my laptop. I don't remember how, but I couldn't do anything on it, and I got a Raspberry Pi running and actually did my class off a little 6-inch screen that I have that was going to be for that box project, that Back 7 project that I've indefinitely postponed. I need to get back to that.
We could do that too. That's another one. It's just to make a totally like off the grid version of Urbit.
The new one, we discussed that, didn't we? The new one from Back 7 that's like way less. It's way less. It's not like this huge box. It's like just let me see if I can find it.
Yeah. For the viewers that aren't aware.
Okay, so Minder Folden says he's using something called Tailscale. I'm not sure what that is. This is with Tailscale making it super easy for me to post from my phone, and VNC to let me warp in to do the Unix stuff to get Urbit going. And he's almost ready to move his peer to it.
Oh wow!
And I guess meaning his Moon. I've got a Moon up and running now, so that's pretty cool. Pretty happy with that. But I'm just running it. I don't have my Planet hosted anywhere yet, and so I'm connecting my Pi to my laptop with Ethernet.
Yeah. So you're accessing it over like a whatever the IP address is for the Pi.
I just go in. I mean, I have the IP address written somewhere, but I just go in and it's like Raspberry Pi.local. It finds it.
Oh, so it's actually putting off some local DNS something.
I guess so. Yeah, that's a level of magic I haven't paid attention to. Yeah, I guess that's about it for my fourth kind of slow.
Right. Rapsif, can you present on that? Are you able to present, or should I just do it?
I think I'm able to. Let me try. Let me
Back
move
7.
this to a separate window. Yeah. So like, let me see here. Achrome tab.
Oh, that is much sleeker, isn't it?
Right. So I think you can see it now. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
Good.
that's the housing. It's got a screen. This is the Raspberry Pi 4, probably, or just they're all the same form factor, right?
Yeah, whichever one. They're marginally different, but like something like this, where there's like, in contrast, this project that he previously did, while way cooler, also has like so much overhead to the front panel connectors. Like, there's no need for us to have like industrial put rewirable connectors coming out of this. You know what I mean? What we need is something very. If we were going to do something like, oh, this is actually a Pi Zero.
Hmm.
It uses a Pi Zero and just the screen. I wonder if a Pi Zero would even run in Urbit. Maybe. In any event, the you really just need the low overhead of getting together something that can allow you to see what you're doing at first, so that you can then connect it to your home network effectively and find out its IP address and find out where you're booting your Urbit to, like what port it's going to be on what IP address, and those sorts of basic things. And then you're going to be accessing it from any web-enabled browser from then on. You know what I mean? So like something like this, I think would be kind of cool for that.
Hmm. What do you think of something like if we sold these things as planets? Super easy user interface, but something will probably go wrong eventually, right? So you could sell service that goes with it too, even though that, to me as a customer, that sounds pretty horrible, but it potentially could be useful for some people.
Yeah, you could sell like professional services, like 10 hours of support time or whatever comes with it or whatever. They're probably not 10. I wouldn't want to spend 10 hours with somebody, but
No.
a couple hours.
Okay.
I think it would be hard to do the support by ourselves, like
Yeah.
without a lot of people.
Indeed. Especially if you sold a lot of
Maybe we could get Palfin to do it.
them. He just read a AI to do it for him.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so that's the back 7 thing that I was thinking of.
Cool. All right. Well, moving on, but somewhat related to hosting. So Talon has recently launched a new website, talon.io. And if you take a look at that website, you'll notice at the very top there's a waitlist button. And that waitlist takes you to a survey that asks a bunch of questions, and it puts you on a list for hosting for, I think right now, it's like the friends and family deal. So it's the lowest cost possible for Talon to do, which is still quite expensive, but it's $21 a month. Probably to go down over time, but it's the sort of the lowest they could get. But the Dalten Collective, I'm happy to share a little cheat code to jump to the top of that list. So if you put in on the second question, the first question is what's your email? Second question is how are you feeling today? And if you write the word calmly with a capital C, it'll take you right to the end, and that's how you know it worked. And all the folks that put calmly as the answer to their second question are going to be the first cohort to get into hosting. So everybody watching the video or on the call, that will be if you want to do some hosting with Talon, which is to say you own the management, or not, let's say you own the Urbit, but the management ID is then given to Talon to run the ship for you on a cloud infrastructure. Then they give you a link that's like your planet name .talon.network and a passphrase to go into use landscape. Then it's always on. They take care of the updates and all that other kind of stuff in the back end. There's not full support yet for like Web Dojo, but that's, as we heard, getting better. So that's
also
that.
We're putting that on Palfin.
Yes,
so
we are.
Everything's going to him. No, but that's really cool. So, like, is the hope that will scale over time for Tlon and be something that Tlon is like really providing as a major service indefinitely? Okay, cool.
It's like a legit business model, like.
And how are you guys handling? How is Tlon handling the gas fees to spawn these planets? Were they
So-
spawned in advance?
Yeah. So when the fees have been lower of the last day or so, they kind of go up and they go down. They go up and they go down. But a lot of them were sort of pre-booted or pre-spawned.
Okay.
And they're kind of sitting back there. I haven't seen, since we did talk with Galen last week about planetoid options, that's still sort of on the table. It just seems, well, DeFi in general has kind of slowed down. The prices kind of things have settled down a little bit. I don't know how stable that is in general, but yeah, there's been some pre-spawning activity going on. So there's at least a bucket of planets that are sort of ready for this.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yep. So you're here to hear first, hopefully. And it's starting. The communications on that are starting in Urbit. You may have seen some stuff about this in Urbit community. And there's also the Talon transmission notebook from Urbit community. So if you don't have that, you can go see that by going into the group and then finding the notebook there, which is good. There's a lot of good information heading out through that channel. But also some other things I heard recently is the next version, the next big OTA, maybe not the next one, but soon, within weeks, is going to have a notification prototype, which should be, I think, pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool. I've been waiting for that for a long time. Because then that makes,
great.
I mean, I think it really does depend on how it's implemented to kind of jive with the aesthetic of Urbit, meaning a calm computing platform. But a lot of times when I need to get a hold of somebody, I would like to use Urbit to do it, but I can't because I no idea when you'll see it, that kind of thing.
Right.
So that is coming soon. So that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that.
That'll also help people develop communities because, like, part of having, like, I run a fitness chat on Urbit, and there's another one, and there's a little less activity on the other one than mine, but I think it's because I hover over mine a lot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm checking that one. I have a lot of stuff that's bold and black on my list of chats that I'm in. You know what I mean? I have 2,000 unread messages right now, and I'm not going to read them all. It's not going to happen. But I know that the chat that I run, I read everything that comes through,
Yeah.
And having notifications on select things might help build communities in that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a counter example to how I think Discord does it the opposite way. It enables push notifications for every message by default. You have to turn them off, which I don't like. But if it was, turned off by default, defaults are really important. So, only when you want it. And then there's different types of notifications, right? So some people do, like in a message board that's very infrequently used, but is actually really important. There's still a use case for, ping me every time something happens. Or just the standard @me, which in this case would be our pat peas, or something like here, which would be a particular channel, or @the community, which would be a notification to everybody. But, also limiting those abilities to certain groups would be also needed, because you don't want everybody usually to be able to message everybody else, because sometimes that goes wrong.
I like that. That'll be very cool.
Yeah. And I know Discord you can restrict the @here and @everyone by like a type or a role. So it would likely have some of those same affordances, but maybe not, depending on how it gets implemented. And maybe it's just in certain areas like direct messages for the beginning, which I would be fine with that.
Very cool.
Yep. And then I think on other news from Urbit that I'm aware of, let's see, what is it called? Index. So the thing that Simfer has been working on was sort of like a curated magazine of content happening on Urbit. Is coming along. Phablid gave us a template for like cover art for this thing as well, which was pretty neat. It's like this template that we can use to create these sort of magazines of curated content throughout either a week or more of stuff being posted on Urbit that's getting added to this kind of curated magazine-like thing. So that'd be fun. Probably a lot of notebook-type content, which doesn't get, I think, used a ton right now, mostly because it's kind of off and away to the side. But yeah, so that's coming down the road pretty soon here too.
We do need. I would love to see notebooks sort of re-centralized for myself, like even just in the interface, because want to go to, or I'm unlikely to go to groups and then click on a notebook. You know what I mean? But I wish I read more of what the interesting people in Urbit are posting on there, because I know that there's interesting stuff.
Yeah, especially, I mean, like a great example, right? Minder Folden is probably the king of notebooks, and it's been a while since I've been back to his, mostly because he posts so much into it that it would often fail. So I never knew if it was actually still up or not. Yeah, but he's got some pretty cool aesthetics in there. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, that's all I had for topics for today. Is there anything else anybody wanted to chat on before we turn off the recording? Okay. All right. We'll see you again next week.